Coogs house. I don't know if it's pancakes or waffles or biscuits or whatever else the Houston Cougars are doing, but they're flipping a bunch of Big 12 recruits in class 2026 and winning in a big, big way.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. It's the everydayer that you are. Appreciate making your first listen each and every day. If you enjoy the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you're a pancake person, a waffle person, whatever your breakfast treat may be, because the Houston Cougars are flipping whatever it is. That will be the opening segment here in a second. And today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Best place to get control of those finances, start building some wealth. We got more on that fun later. We're going to talk some about those Houston Cougar flips. We'll talk about who else is coming in the class of 2026. And last but not least, some conference news that hits Houston in their first conference game with Deion Sanders. Deion, maybe Guion. We'll talk about that in a second. But first, the Houston Cougars were flipping people all weekend long. Now, I opened up with some anticipation going into Friday. Something big was happening. 5-star quarterback commit Keisean Henderson, who I maintain is probably still the best recruiter for Houston right now. The highest ranked offensive recruit to ever come through the program history. Cut off his recruitment back in early June. 5-star quarterback. Big deal. He tweeted out earlier in the week, last week, that Friday big news was coming. And so Friday, people geared up, people excited. Okay, class 2026, what are we doing? Who are we adding? There's a 5-star running back / receiver we'll talk about later in the show that maybe was in some people's minds about this. There was also this thought of like, hey, maybe this is going to be something else going on. What's going on? Is it program wide? Is it so people excited about lots of different things? And it was very clearly flipping recruits as early as Friday. Now, admittedly, I think there was some thought that this was all going to happen Friday, and it actually happened over the course of the weekend. But the first John Hebert, first commitment to Houston out of the three from the weekend was John Hebert. Hebert is a 5'10", 185-pound, 3-star running back, was a 6A first-team All-State guy in the state of Texas last year out of Strake Jesuit High School in Houston. He decommitted from the Washington State Cougars on Friday morning, only to commit to the Houston Cougars, the better Cougars, by Friday night. Now, this is a very unassuming guy, a very team-first guy. I've never heard him talk about his own talent, but that is certainly not because he doesn't have any. The kid had 3,500 yards in 13 games last season. Yes, you heard that correct. Not 3,500 yards in his first 3 years of high school. He had 3,500 rushing yards in 13 games in 6A football last season as a junior. He is a tremendous running back. A lot of wiggle, really good pull-away speed after he gets out of the hole. You know, I guess at 5'10", 185 pounds, you're going to have people say he needs to gain some weight, put on some weight in the weight room with Hester and those guys. But truthfully, I don't see that pop up when you watch his video a whole lot. It doesn't look like it pops out like that on video. Really tremendous workhorse type of running back to carry that torch for those guys. And obviously, he wanted to come to Houston, stay in Houston, wanted to, stay in the city and represent the city. He had originally committed to Washington State on June 28th. A couple days later, July 1st, he got an offer from Houston. He decommitted and then committed to Houston, decommitted from Washington State, committed to Houston on Friday, July 25th over the course of the day. And big move from him. The other big flip of the weekend was top 10 offensive tackle in the state of Texas, Rhett Gray. Now, Rhett is 6'8", 290. He had Houston in his top 3 at TCU and Northwestern in there as well, and chose TCU initially last month. And I fully remember coming on the show and talking about how that was a big miss for Houston. 6'8", 290. The guy's got gigantic size. Just a big frame to put a lot of strength and muscle on and time in the weight room. And all of that, he chose TCU, and it felt like it hurt. For a second, he's from Weatherford, Texas, so that is, I guess, closer to home. But he ultimately decommitted and recommitted to Houston very quickly and abruptly on Saturday. I do think that he was actually going to do that on Friday, but some other things popped up. It sounds like either way, at 6'8", 290, I stress that's like still a very athletically built guy. Might even be underweight for what you want him to do at 290 pounds. But at 6'8" on the frame, he probably needs to put on some muscle mass and put on some stuff like that to come into Houston and play in the Big 12 level. It reminds me a lot of like when Patrick Paul, who's now a Miami Dolphin, came through Houston, was second round pick. He's 6'7". He was kind of a similar build in high school. Paul might have even had a little bit more fluff on him, honestly. The difference to me is that Paul was really, really bendy, and Rhett Gray still got to work on that, but it's certainly something he can develop. I think when jumps out when I watch Rhett Gray's film is that he's like super physical, like a very like football player kind of guy. Like he wants to drive guys off the ball. He wants to lay that last hit. He wants to be involved in the physicality in a way that you just need big offensive linemen to do. And we talked with Locked On's recruiting expert, host of Locked On, the Portal, Brian Smith, about offensive linemen and what he would, I think, say about Gray and any offensive lineman at this kind of talent, but certainly any kind of, I mean, Rhett Gray, I should point out, is a high-end 3-star, flirting with that line of the 4th star, might get it this fall. We know how some recruiting outlets will hurt guys that commit to Big 12 schools or whatever. That's fine. Guys, tremendous. Top 10 offensive tackle in the state of Texas. And what Brian has told us in the past about offensive linemen is that they're super loyal typically in their commitments. They're not once they've signed with your school, so we got to get signing day, right? These are both flips. We got to get signing day on them. Once they sign with your school, they typically, offensive linemen don't transfer a whole lot because they like get in a locker room. They like their guys. They're focused more on playing with their offensive line unit. Most offensive linemen understand that it's the long game, right? You're not going to play as a freshman, sophomore. Typically, you got to develop your body and all of that. And I think that's why getting a guy like Gray in the high school class, assuming we get him to signing day, we did just flip him, so we got to keep that in mind. Getting him to signing day is going to be important for this class. I don't think they're done. We'll talk about that in segment 2. But Rhett Gray brought a buddy with him, Liam Riley, another Weatherford product. These two guys are very close, it looks like, on social media. Riley's a linebacker, 6'1", 215. Look, Riley is a very quiet guy on social media. He has 4 posts on his Instagram, and he has very few tweets outside of like the occasional "here's my highlight tape" kind of tweet. Visibly very close friends with Rhett Gray. Of those 4 Instagram posts I mentioned, 2 of them are like pictures of he and Rhett playing together. Like, and they play offense and defense. It's not like on the field at the same time by happenstance. These guys are close, and I think that is a big deal here. Liam Riley, for what it's worth, got a Houston offer on June 8th and tore his ACL early in July. I guess he announced it publicly on July 5th. And I feel like, unfortunately for Riley, that means his senior season is over. And he was looking at things like, okay, I don't have to worry. I'm recovering. I'm healing. Where am I going to go? And he was making decisions. I wonder how much he and Rhett Gray talked together about this decision, right? Rhett was obviously pretty high on Houston to have them as top 3. But I thought Riley was really good in his junior video from high school. Obviously, he's going to miss his senior year. He's going to rehab that injury and develop when he gets to Houston. But recruit, retain, develop. That's what Houston and Willie Fritz do. So I'm comfortable saying that's okay for them to do. Riley did a really good job, I thought, in his video of tracking backfield action at a linebacker. That's what I note 3 times in when I watched from his huddle tape. I also will point out that at 6'1", 215, they seem to send him on like stunts and blitzes a lot, which can kind of make that he's playing around the line of scrimmage a lot, which kind of make his coverage stuff hard to figure out. I don't know that he's necessarily bad at it, but just wasn't his job. And so I don't really have a fair judgment on any of that. But at 215, rehab that ACL, put another 25 pounds. He might not be much of a coverage kind of linebacker anyway, frankly, by the time it's time to get him on the field in Houston, right? So really big weekend in recruiting for the Houston Cougars, a lot of big wins and a couple big flips. And that's a credit to the staff. That's the name of the game at this point in the year. You're trying to get recruits and have not how many guys you can have in early July, not how many guys you have in June, how many guys can you have in your pocket on signing day when these guys sign the letters of intent, and you want to try and build your roster moving forward. It's a big, big deal. I'll talk about other guys that could join them in that class 2026 in a second in the second segment. Before we get too far, I do remind you that today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is the best place to make sure that you are managing your wealth. If you ever felt like managing money could be easier, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning big purchases, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch is more than just a budgeting app, though. It is a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I mentioned I teach, I coach, I podcast. My wife has multiple streams of income too. We have it all coming into one place, and the dashboard and Monarch Money keeps track of all of it. I can see things like I'm spending too much money on takeout. Again, I do all these things. I don't have time to cook all the time. It's like, Parker, make the time to cook. The takeout is costing you too much money per month, especially those things like cheap. I'm not going to give anyone shout outs because they don't sponsor the show, but drive through and stuff like that. That needs to go away. Monarch Money makes that very visible and easy to make tangible to fix your spending habits. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first full year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On College for half off your first full year. Park Rangers, Locked On Coogs here, and we are looking at Houston Cougars recruiting, the first two segments here. The first one is about some guys that flipped over and made a big weekend for Houston. But admittedly, I think there's actually potential for another big week in the immediate future, potentially as early as when you're hearing this today. There's other guys I think you could see Houston target flipping. I want to talk about why that is, and then another couple guys that I think will commit somewhere and could commit to Houston this week as well. The process of flipping is interesting, though, because Houston got a couple of the weekend, and I'm hoping to get some more without losing any between now and signing day. And what I think is interesting is it's happening after missing out on a couple of big recruits, right? You don't get the big offensive lineman from Midland Primus. Suddenly you have some, honestly, if we're being honest, but in modern college football, like more NIL funds to spend. Okay, the money you had committed to the class 2026, you're not spending that portion of the pie on Primus. You make another round of phone calls. You call those kids that up that had you high on their list, had you in their top three, and say, hey, listen, I think we can make something work here. Like, hey, we really think you can still help us out here. If it's not NIL money, whatever the case may be, right? You can reallocate your efforts to those new kids, right? And so you can go back through the Rolodex. Rolodex is where you keep phone numbers for the young crowd at home and find new guys to come up. So I looked at some guys I think had Houston pretty far along in their recruitment process that may be excited about the things building. And in the spirit of Rhett Gray, who decommitted from TCU to come to Houston, I'm going to stick with my first one being Devan Robison. I keep wanting to say Robinson. It's spelled like Robinson, but without the first N. Devan Robison, 6'2", 330-pound interior offensive lineman for Pasadena Memorial. I think the same way that you could convince Gray to come play in an offense as a big 6'8", like bully type of offensive lineman, to come play an offense with Keisean Henderson, to play an offense with John Hebert, to play an offense with receivers and like Paris Melvin. I guess we don't really know offense position he'll play, running back, receiver, whatever. Jaden Warren on the outside, like explosive playmakers on offense. It's easy to convince a guy like Robison to come do the same thing as well. You can also convince him like, hey, you can play on the same side of the line as Rhett Gray. That's two high-end prospects in the state of Texas that clearly wanted to play together at TCU in Fort Worth. And Devan Robison's from Pasadena Memorial High School. I feel like it's not a crazy idea. They could flip him and convince him to stay home. We'll see. Another one I was sticking on the offensive line here because I think that's where Houston needs to do the most work in the 2026 class as far as filling it out. Has looked at Nicholas Howard, 6'6", 285-pound offensive tackle from Pitt, or I guess committed to Pitt, but he's from Pearland, went to Pearland High School, or is going to be a senior at Pearland High School. And I think the deal there is you convince like, listen, man, you're going to go all the way to Pitt, play in the ACC. Who knows? The North Carolina's going to blow up the ACC and the whole thing's going to fall apart to be playing non-power conference football anyway by the time you actually get on the field, right? We're going to develop you. We can develop you and Rhett Gray together. You're both guys that are tall and like athletically built. You're both, from Texas. You're from Pearland. If you're talking Nick Howard, like you're from Pearland, you can come and play at home. Mama can watch you play. What else can you? That's a great sell for kids, especially that's already looking to go so far away at Pitt. And then another offensive lineman, Hugh Smith, 6'5", 275 pounds, interior guy, so another guard type guy, currently committed to Arkansas. He's from Ridgepoint. I think you can look at him and say, hey, you're going to go try and play in the SEC, and I get the appeal of that. We're building something on offense that's going to rival that. You look at the offensive talent Houston's bringing in and the way this machine is running, the way the thing is pushing, and say, hey, listen, be a part of this offense, be part of what we're doing here. Now, Hugh Smith is more another one of these aggressive guys. Robison's a true road grader, just runs over people, just like, I don't want to say like waddles like in an insulting way, but just like steamrolls people, just like slow and steady and just right, that kind of thing. We've got a bunch of different kinds of athletes here on the offensive line. And admittedly, flipping is hard. I don't mean to say it's easy to do, especially with the offensive lineman type guys. But I do wonder if you're gaining enough momentum here after the big, 6 weeks or so of summer that Houston had in recruiting after Keisean's, cutting off of the rest of his recruitment process. Can you twist that and convey that to you guys? Like, listen, we're building it here in your backyard. These are 3 kids. Robison is from Memorial, Howard is from Pearland, and Smith is from Ridgepoint. Can you say, hey, stay home, let's build it here? Houston, as is on my cap, can be across your chest when we do this. Now, other guys I think you can be on the lookout for commitments this week. We don't have a date on Keisean Graves, the 6 foot, 180-pound athlete from Kilgore, who I think will do a lot of things. I think he's best fit as a linebacker. Could also see him playing outside receiver. Guy's really good at a lot of things, and that's a good problem to have. I kind of thought, based on some guys telling me that they felt good about his recruitment, that he might have been the commitment last week. He obviously was not yet. He might have committed by the time we listen to this on Monday. We'll see. I do think, though, that they feel good about where they stand with him, and that while he may be taking his time this summer, and every kid's entitled to do that, obviously, I do think that you could see him commit to Houston in the near future. I think, frankly, you can see based on how his stock rises, but his offer sheet doesn't. People kind of think he's locked in, but things have happened weirder than that in the past. So we'll see where that goes. And then the other big name here is Davian Groce. Davian Groce is 6'1", 190 pounds. He's listed as an athlete or a wide receiver or a running back, and he could play really any offensive weapon type position. The difference between he and Melvin, I think there's a lot of people that worry about the duplicity of having Paris Melvin, who is committed, the 4-star commitment already in the class, and Groce, is that they're both the same position, like a very tooly kind of offensive player. You're just going to land up at a bunch of different places. But where Melvin has wiggle and shakes and speed, like Davian Groce is 6'1", 190 pounds. This guy is strong, right? Like, I think you can have some yin and yang out of these 2 guys. It's not that either lacks the other set of skills completely, but Groce is a very, like, they're both listed as athletes. I think it's like, well, how many of those do you really need? It's like, I actually think that they actually complement each other really, really well. A lot of people assume that Davian Groce is committed to Oklahoma, or is going to commit to Oklahoma. He's a 5-star athlete on some outlets. He's a big-time guy, and I will say, generally speaking, Oklahoma has more cash to throw around at these kinds of things. That's not always the deciding factor, and I certainly don't mean to say that I have not heard that is like the deciding factor for Davian or anything like that. But I do think that, they're also in the SEC presently, and while they had a down year last year, they've been successful in the last decade. Houston's, at a good spot in the rebuilding process, but is in the rebuilding process. So I see why people are saying that, but I could also see him saying, listen, you got all this other talent coming in on offense. They can't cover all of us. We got a 5-star quarterback, and Oklahoma can't say that, right? Like, suddenly things can start to shift in Houston's way. Groce is from the North Texas Frisco area. I think he's Lone Star, Frisco Lone Star, one of the Frisco schools. And that's interesting because it's actually, I think, on a map about equidistant between Norman and Houston. It actually might be closer to Norman, Oklahoma. So as far as the closeness to home thing, it might not work quite with him like it would be with Graves from Kilgore, or the 3 offensive linemen I mentioned from the city itself. But either way, I think Houston's in a good spot with him, so we'll see where those commitments go. Obviously, if big commitments break, we'll be here at Locked On Coogs to break down everything as they happen. Before we get out of here, I do want to do a little bit talking about what's happening in the conference, specifically with Houston's first conference opponent this season. But first, Locked on Coogs, Parker Ainsworth here, talking about Neon Deion. The Colorado Buffaloes are Houston's first Big 12 opponent this season. Play on Friday night on week 3. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's a home game, fun game for Houston. It's week 4, but it's a fun atmosphere for Houston in a lot of kind of way. I guess if you count week 0. Anyway, fun atmosphere for Houston. Friday night game, marquee television matchup. Deion Sanders coming to town. So we think the big news out of Colorado is that Deion Sanders, who has been dealing with health issues, is set to have a press conference at noon Texas time, noon Central time on Monday with his medical staff present. Now, I was hypothesizing he might not have shown up to Big 12 media days because of some of his health stuff. It sounds like he made it there. It sounds like he did avoid some of his required things. But when asked about it at media days, Deion Sanders replied to The Athletic, sometimes you'll be on that bull junk, so I'm really not going to tell you much. You know that. But I'm not here to talk to you about my health. I'm here to talk to you about my team. And then they want to talk about his team, talk about NIL, have the viral quotes and stuff like that from that, right? He's also been spotted in Tampa Bay watching his son Shiloh work out. Shiloh Sanders trying to make the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's not quite guaranteed that by any stretch, right? Deion also missed some of their spring practices, his own health stuff. There's talk about needing to amputate more of his foot and leg. If you don't know, he's missing a few toes on one of his feet with some of this health stuff he's got going on. And look, I want to stress before I get into the football side of this, this is much more of a human story. And Kevin Borba over at Locked On Buffs is doing a great job of covering it from all the angles, right? I don't want to sound like obtuse or like I'm looking past the human element of this. Obviously, Deion Sanders needs to take care of his health. Deion Sanders needs to take care of being a father. He needs to take care of being a man. Like, he has other things he's got to take care of. I totally get that. And from a football perspective, this could dramatically shape how Houston's first month of football goes. You could be looking at a team that suddenly goes from, we'll see how they go. They got a Power 4 out of conference team in Oregon State, and they got Colorado, and all this kind of, to suddenly you're looking at like, why can't they be 5-0? Like, you're shifting things ever so slightly because of how this could dramatically change that singular team. Right now, I will say, listen, whether it's a hiatus, an exodus, an absence, etc., not having your head coach on the sidelines impacts teams, and it kind of polarizes. You go either the galvanizing, play together kind of way, or the we have no one here to keep anything together kind of. Like, you just go one of two ways, right? I don't know what the health news will be. I don't know how it will impact Colorado from that instance. But if he's about to announce, like, hey, I got to go do some treatments, I'm not going to be around until October. I'm telling you right now, man, that Houston money line is going to go up. That's going to be in Houston's favor. At home, no Deion. Like, come on, right? If it's worse than that, again, we are not angling for anything here. The human story is more important. But from a football perspective, this is a Houston Cougar football show, Houston Cougar sports show, but talking about football right now. From a football perspective, if he has to hang it up and quit, which it does sound like it's potentially on the table, that means all those guys have 30 days to enter the transfer portal. You want to go get any? So they don't even know who their own quarterback is. They've sent 2 to media day. It's like suddenly a lot of these questions are surrounding that program. And it's like, Houston gets them as their first Big 12 game. This is a far cry from the schedule a year ago, folks. And that could really help set this team up for success in a lot of ways. Again, there are more important things here. And as a guy that loved Deion, the football player, because he's just he's just a showman. He's all energy all the time. He was the center of the stage, etc. And frankly, as someone who, like, in the middle of creating my own content at Big 12 Media Days, like, put all that on pause, go listen to him talk. He still carries a room like that. And I appreciate that in a lot of ways, frankly. Right. He's must watch and must listen all the time. Right. He he talks about NIL dollars and putting caps on that, but told the Dallas Cowboys to put him on layaway. Like this guy's got a lot of different sides to him in a lot of different ways. And you're probably telling me in the comments what you think about him, and that's totally fine too. He is polarizing. He is a guy that pulls out an emotion and a reaction from people. I don't think that we should look past that. This is a real painful time for he and his family, obviously. All the other chaos aside, right? Just like he's having health problems when he needs to be a father figure for his kids as they're transitioning to being professionals in their career that he was also professional in, and he can't be the best advice giver in that. Obviously, if he's dealing with these health things, like that's all challenging. And that challenge weirdly could help Houston as it continues. So it's something to monitor as we go here. And I don't want to beat a horse while it's laying on the ground. That doesn't seem fair. The horse has got the legs broken, all that kind of stuff, right? But if I had to beat a horse in a race, and you tell me I could race the horse that's on the ground, I could race the horse standing up, I'd probably rather race the horse on the ground. I don't know. I might want to check on the one on the ground, but probably rather race that one. So I think that it's an interesting dilemma when you look at the personal side of it. And obviously, there's a decent chance that he says at his media availability in the middle of the day on Monday, hey, I'm good, let's roll. And then we just play ball. And I still think Houston wins that game. It's just not the same kind of contest. But there's a chance something else that's happening here. And if Deion is Gion, my fun play on words, if Deion's gone, it didn't work out very well. If Deion's gone, I do think that this is a gigantic college football story, a big, meaty. Like if he goes, he had this whole ordeal about bringing in Louis bags and bringing in new players, and he replaced the whole roster and like very quickly and suddenly and abruptly, he bluntly stole Alton McCaskill from Houston, right? Like those kinds of things happened, and now, and now suddenly, it could all be about to fall at the bottom. If he's hanging it up, those guys didn't commit to Boulder. All that money wasn't committed because they're Boulder. All that popularity, them joining the Big 12, you could argue, wasn't because of Boulder. It's because of Deion. And that's going to never stop shifting, right? Very, very quickly. So it is Houston's first conference opponent. It is a big story in the conference. And man, oh man, I sit here and watch it and look at it. And I'm just like, I really hope he's okay. I hope long-term health, Deion Sanders is around. I don't want anything chaotic, awful. I do want to know what's happening though. And part of that's because I'm just like, I guess, a little greedy with I just want to know what's going on and all that. But also it directly impacts Houston's schedule. It directly impacts how Houston starts the year. And frankly, we see these storylines. Last year, BYU, first 2/3 of the year, was on top of the world. And, they drop one here, drop one there. But you could argue that they were very close to riding that to a college football playoff berth. There were people arguing for them to be in, certainly. They beat SMU, and SMU got in. I think that how you start the year is how you start your story. And the story is a big part of this. I'm not saying they're a CFP team necessarily in the second year of this Willie Fitz rebuild, but I will say having that game altered changes things. And we'll see how it alters. We'll see how it changes. We'll see. Hopefully everyone's okay. Hopefully beat them straight up fair and square. Hopefully that all happens. But whatever happens, we'll be here at Locked On Coogs breaking it all down live. If something crazy happens, if not, hit the bell and subscribe so you know when we are live. Locked On Coogs, the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.